Most of us have been taught that there is a difference between Jew and Gentile. Some have even noticed how Apostle John constantly spoke of the Jews in a way that pitted them as the adversary. But wait, weren't Messiah and his disciples Jews themselves? When we hear the word Israel, we generally associate that with the Jews, and according to the churches, those were the original chosen people before our God replaced them with his new people, the church. So that's the basic understanding most of the church world has today. But now the question, is that understanding accurate? As we do in all our studies, we're going to pick through the Bible and study these things out and try our best to trade in some of our confusion that we were born into for some revelation. From the beginning of the Bible, Yahweh dealt with man, and we see his focus was initially with a single lineage. First, it was Adam. Later, it was Noah. Eventually, Abraham was called out of Babylon. Next, his son Isaac became the focus, and then the honor birthright landed in his son Jacob's lap. From here, this tree grew branches. Jacob's name was changed to Israel, and he had 12 sons. These 12 sons became 12 tribes, and from this point forward, the people of Yahweh were simply called Israel, the house of Israel, or something similar to that. So the chosen people are the ones who descended from one of these 12 tribes. Now at this point, let's make one thing clear. Israel describes all of the descendants of 12 different tribes of people, not just one or even two of the 12 tribes, but all of them. Also, to be abundantly clear, Israel is a people. What Israel is not is a landmass in the Middle East. Israel is not a Jewish state. When we learn what a Jew is later, the distinction will be a lot clearer. Oh, and by the way, all of this history from Adam to the 12 tribes of Israel was recorded in the book of Genesis. Speaking of Genesis, in chapter 10, we find the first appearance of the word Gentiles, and this is another of the 4 terms we want to look at in this study. So what does that word mean, and who are the Gentiles? Well, Gentile simply means nation. By implication, it means nations other than Israel. So to Israel, everybody else in the world is a Gentile. Near the beginning of our Bibles, this line between Israel and the Gentiles was very easy to draw. You were either one or the other, and there was little room for in between, although conversion was a possibility. As we're going to discover a bit later, this line eventually became impossibly blurry. For now, let's look at who the Jews are. This is where things start to get a little tricky. To begin, we're going to jump back into a little more Bible history. It starts with a promise that Yahweh made to Israel, that if they broke their covenant with him, that he would scatter them among the nations, which we learned is the Gentiles. We find this story in Deuteronomy chapter 4, verses 27 and 28. And Yahweh shall scatter you among the nations, and you shall be left few in number among the heathen, where Yahweh shall lead you. And there you shall serve gods, the work of men's hands, wood and stone, which neither see, nor hear, nor eat, nor smell. Later, after the reign of King Solomon, the people of Israel were divided into 2 kingdoms, a northern kingdom consisting of 10 of the tribes, and a southern kingdom consisting of the remaining 2. The 10 tribes called themselves Israel, while the 2 tribes called themselves Judah. We can read about this division in the first book of Kings. Anyway, as the story continues, the people were living in disobedience to the laws Yahweh gave us, and as such, he sent prophets to call them back to repentance. Naturally, the call went unheeded, and judgment followed. The Assyrians conquered the 10 tribes of Israel, enslaving and deporting all those who were not killed in the battle, and those people were scattered throughout different lands. History has no record of where they or their descendants have ended up. However, within the span of 2,700 years since it happened, it's reasonable to conclude that their descendants could be, and most likely are, pretty much everywhere. But we'll get back to this point a little bit later. Anyway, this was the judgment of the northern kingdom, but Judah's fate was different. The southern kingdom spent 70 years in Babylonian captivity, after which they were allowed to return to the promised land. It was during the time that Judah was in Babylonian captivity that they first began calling themselves Jews. Judah, Jews. So a Jew is a descendant of either the tribe of Judah or the tribe of Benjamin. While Judah was in captivity in Babylon, they came to terms with the fact that it was a judgment upon them for their disobedience to the law of Yahweh that they were in Babylon in the first place. For this reason, they took egregious steps to ensure that it would never happen again. The Jews took it upon themselves to elaborate upon the laws they had broken and to fortify those laws to make them even harder to break. If a law of Yahweh told us not to work on Sabbath, their new and improved laws would go to great lengths to explain what exactly constitutes work, how far of a distance we could travel, and so on and so forth. Eventually, these fence laws that were created, plus the mysticism that they learned from the Babylonians, became a religion unto itself, filling volumes of books with commandments and traditions of men which, in many cases, led them to violate the original laws of Yahweh found in the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible, that these laws were actually designed to help man avoid breaking in the first place. Today, the religion that follows all of these laws and traditions and mysticism is called Rabbinical Judaism, and a practitioner of this religion, regardless of who his parents are, is also called a Jew. So the word Jew has 2 meanings. One refers to a descendant of the kingdom of Judah, which represented 2 of the 12 tribes of Israel. The other refers to a person who practices the traditions and commandments and perhaps the mysticism of Rabbinical Judaism. Back to the book of John in the Bible. Remember how he spoke often of the Jews as if they were the enemy? This should seem strange, seeing as how both he and the Messiah, for that matter, were descendants of the kingdom of Judah. But he was using the term describing the practice of a religion which pitted those people in opposition to the path the disciples were walking. They were all Jews by heritage, but John was not submitting himself to the traditions of the scribes and Pharisees, and therefore was not a religious Jew as we would recognize today. So, going back to Israel now, those 10 tribes were lost, right? This is true, but we know that they won't be lost forever. The scriptures in our Bibles assure us that those 10 tribes are still out there and will ultimately be reunited with Judah, completing the nation of Israel once again. Here is the word of prophecy given to Ezekiel on the matter. We find this in Ezekiel chapter 37. This is a long passage, verses 15 through 23. The word of Yahweh came again unto me, saying, Moreover, you son of man, take one stick and write upon it for Judah and for the children of Israel his companions. Then take another stick and write upon it for Joseph, the stick of Ephraim, for all of the house of Israel his companions, and join them one to another into one stick, and they shall become one in your hand. And when the children of your people shall speak to you, saying, Will you not show us what you mean by this? Say to them, This says Yahweh Elohim, Behold, I will take the stick of Joseph, which is in the hand of Ephraim, and the tribes of Israel his fellows, and will put them with him, even with the stick of Judah, and make them one stick, and they shall be one in my hand. And the sticks whereon you write shall be in your hand before their eyes. And say to them, This says Yahweh Elohim, Behold, I will take the children of Israel from among the heathen where they have gone, and will gather them on every side, and bring them into their own land. And I will make them one nation in the land upon the mountains of Israel, and one king shall be king to them all. And they shall be no more two nations, neither shall they be divided into two kingdoms any more at all. Neither shall they defile themselves any more with their idols, nor with their detestable things, nor with any of their transgressions. But I will save them out of all their dwelling places wherein they have sinned, and will cleanse them. So shall they be my people, and I will be their Elohim. So for the last 2,700 years, the 10 lost tribes of Israel, or as Messiah called them, the lost sheep of the house of Israel, are all over the world, mingled with the Gentiles. There is no way to know who's who, aside from seeing how they respond to the word of Yahweh and how they faithfully obey his commandments. Okay, so our last group of people we want to identify in the Bible is called the church. To understand who they are, we're going to do a simple word study, and instead of trying to decide for ourselves what we think the church is, we're going to look at the apostles' understanding of the term. After all, if anybody knows what the church is supposed to be, I suspect it'd be the guys we believe founded the thing, right? When we look up the word church in a concordance of our New Testament, we see that it comes from a Greek word pronounced ekklesia. That word means a meeting, or more appropriately, a congregation. Now, most of our Bibles translate the Old Testament from Hebrew and the New Testament from Greek. As such, even in English, there seems to be a significant difference of terminologies used between the two. However, in the days of Messiah and the apostles, they used a Greek translation of the Old Testament called the Septuagint, which is still around today. When we dig into that, we discover something very surprising, that the same Greek word we translate into church in our New Testaments was used in this Bible of the Apostles almost 80 different times to refer to none other than Israel. So when we talk about the church in the Bible, we aren't talking about something that is new or recently created, or Gentile, or practicing a new religion, but rather we're talking about an assembly of people from the same 12 tribes born in the book of Genesis. Before we close this study, let's review the vocabulary one more time, as it's really impossible to understand the Bible, particularly the New Testament, without it. Israel is a word that describes the chosen people of Yahweh. They are a nation of faith. They are divided into 12 tribes, only 2 of which are represented by the term Jew. What Israel is not is a Jewish country in the Middle East. The word Jew means 2 different things. It can be a descendant of one of the 2 tribes of the southern kingdom, Judah or Benjamin, or it can be a person who practices the religion of rabbinical Judaism. Gentiles are all the people of the world and all their nations other than Israel. The 10 lost tribes of Israel are scattered throughout and mingled with Gentiles all over the world, and most of them have no idea whatsoever of who they are and what their true identity is. Lastly, we have the church, which is really just another word for an assembly of the people of Israel. This isn't a separate group of people that came about in the New Testament. This is Israel all over again. The church is not a building. It's not a group of people practicing Christianity. Now that you have a clearer understanding of the different peoples mentioned in the Bible, go back and read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and suddenly the scriptures should have a radically different meaning and much clearer understanding than they did before.